I did not die screaming. I died mid-thought, clutching a certainty that had always felt like safety. The pain came suddenly, a crushing weight behind my ribs, and the room blurred into urgency, voices, hands, the metallic taste of fear. Then everything stopped, not gradually, but decisively, as if the world itself had been unplugged. I expected darkness. Instead, awareness flooded me. I was standing in a vast stillness, stripped of my body and yet more myself than I had ever been. The air shimmered with a living light that pressed gently against my thoughts, and I knew, without being told, that nothing false could breathe here. I reached instinctively for the things that had defined me, my opinions, my loyalties, the lines I had learned to draw so confidently. But they were gone, left behind like tools at a locked door. Fear flared, sharp and naked. Then the light gathered, not into spectacle, but into presence. Jesus stood before me, not distant, not soft-edged, not symbolic. His eyes held oceans of mercy and a fire that made my excuses collapse before they could rise. I felt seen, not watched, but known, and the weight of that knowing bent me inward. He did not accuse me. He let the truth do that work. In the silence, I felt my life open like a book with no edits. The people I had feared, the people I had reduced to threats, the prayers I had prayed for protection while my heart remained guarded against compassion. I wanted to speak, to explain that I was only trying to keep order, that fear had seemed like wisdom. But my mouth could not shape the lie. Jesus stepped closer, and the light intensified, not to punish, but to reveal. "America fears migrants," he said, his voice steady and sorrowful, "but refuses to fear me." The words struck deeper than pain ever had. I felt something ancient and brittle crack inside me. Fear of God, not terror but reverence, had been replaced in me by fear of loss, fear of change, fear of loving beyond borders. I had learned to protect myself with policy and posture, calling it righteousness, while mercy waited outside my concern. Jesus looked at me, and in his gaze I felt the ache of heaven for earth, the grief of love rejected in the name of safety. "You guarded your gates," he continued gently, "but you closed your heart." As he spoke, the stillness shifted, preparing to show me what heaven had seen all along. I sensed that judgment was not approaching. It had begun, not as a sentence, but as exposure. And standing there with every border I had trusted erased, I realized with trembling clarity I had brought nothing into eternity but the truth of who I had loved. At a movement of his hand, the stillness opened, and my life rose around us, not as memories softened by time, but as moments sharpened by truth. I watched myself speak with confidence, drawing lines with words I believed were wise. I saw the faces I had never learned to see as faces, only as numbers, headlines, problems to be managed from a distance. Each scene carried its intention like a weight, and I felt it settle into me now. I had not hated anyone, I told myself. I had simply prioritized order. But heaven showed me how often fear had worn the mask of prudence, how easily I had baptized suspicion and called it discernment. Jesus walked beside me as these moments passed, his presence steady, unflinching. I saw prayers I had prayed for protection that never asked for love. I saw how often I had invoked God's name to defend comfort rather than to shoulder sacrifice. "You asked me to keep danger out," he said quietly, "but you did not ask me to bring compassion in." The truth of it hollowed me. I had spoken of God's sovereignty while resisting his commands whenever they disrupted my sense of control. I had wanted a God who secured borders, not a God who crossed them. The scenes widened, and I was shown the balance between heaven and earth. I saw prayers rise from places I had dismissed, broken homes, crowded shelters, weary hearts longing not for conquest, but for rest. Their cries did not overwhelm heaven, they aligned it. Mercy flowed downward like a river, precise and patient, while justice stood firm, refusing to be rushed by fear. My life was there too, placed gently on the scale. I saw where love had moved through me freely, and where it had stopped at the edge of my comfort. Each pause mattered, each refusal echoed. I tried to speak, my voice shaking. "Lord, I thought I was being careful." Jesus turned to me, and his eyes held sorrow without condemnation. "Carefulness that avoids love," he said, "is fear dressed in wisdom." The words settled deep, and I understood how often I had mistaken restraint for righteousness. Heaven did not despise order, but it demanded love first. Order without love hardened into exclusion. Love without truth dissolved into chaos. I had chosen one and ignored the other. As the light deepened, I sensed we were moving closer to something final, a threshold where explanations would no longer matter. The lines I had drawn in God's name dissolved completely, and in their absence I felt both terror and relief. For the first time, I was no longer defending myself. I was being invited to see, and I knew the next revelation would not be about what I believed, but about who I had refused to love. We entered a stillness so complete it felt like the center of all things. There were no walls, no throne, no crowd. Yet I knew I was standing in judgment, not the kind I had imagined in sermons or debates, but something far more unsettling. Truth without commentary. Nothing argued, nothing defended, everything simply was. Jesus stood before me, and when he spoke my name, it carried the full weight of who I had been becoming. The sound of it stripped away the last layers of self-deception, and I felt smaller, not erased, but measured. My life unfolded again, not in scenes this time, but in consequences. I felt what my choices had produced. The fear I had amplified settled back into me like cold. The compassion I had withheld returned as absence, heavy and undeniable. I felt the loneliness of those I had reduced to threats, the exhaustion of those who had knocked on doors I had never opened. This was not punishment inflicted from outside, it was reality revealed from within. I understood then that judgment was not God deciding my worth, it was God showing me what my love had become. I looked at Jesus, desperate now, not for vindication, but for hope. That was when I saw his scars clearly. They were not subtle, not symbolic. They burned with a radiance that made every argument I had ever made feel hollow. His wounds told a story of borders crossed willingly, of fear absorbed rather than projected, of love poured out without first demanding safety. "I did not fear them," he said softly, and I knew he meant everyone I had feared. "I feared losing you." The sentence shattered me. Tears, if such a thing existed there, rose through me, raw and unrestrained. I fell inward, undone by the realization that I had asked God to protect me from the very people he had died to save. I had spoken of holiness while resisting proximity to suffering. I had wanted a distant love, a controlled compassion, a faith that never risked being misunderstood. Jesus' gaze held me there, firm and unyielding, yet filled with a mercy that refused to lie. "Fear of me," he said, "is the beginning of wisdom. Fear of others is the beginning of exile." The air shifted, and I sensed a threshold near, not yet visible, but present. I felt both drawn and restrained, as if my soul were being asked a final question without words. Would I surrender the fear that had shaped me? Would I let love reorder me completely? Judgment had done its work. Nothing was hidden anymore, and as I stood there, trembling and exposed, I knew the next moment would decide whether mercy would remain an idea or become my transformation. Mercy arrived not as relief, but as fire. I felt it before I understood it, moving through me like heat through bone, not to destroy, but to burn away what could not pass forward. Jesus stepped closer, and the nearness of him made my remaining defenses feel painfully obvious. "You feared disorder," he said gently, "because you did not trust love to hold." His words named the route I had avoided all my life. I had trusted systems more than the Spirit, distance more than devotion, control more than compassion. Mercy now asked me to release all of it. Images surfaced again, but differently. I saw moments when love had stood right in front of me, inconvenient and costly, and I had chosen safety instead. I saw how often I had prayed for God to fix the world without allowing Him to soften me. The grief of it was unbearable. "Lord," I whispered, my voice breaking, "I thought I was being faithful." Jesus looked at me with eyes that held no anger, only truth. "Faith that refuses love," he replied, "is fear wearing my name." The sentence cut cleanly, and I felt my pride finally collapse. Then he showed me his blood, not spilling now, but ever present, living, sufficient. It flowed through every place I had sealed off, touching the fear, the suspicion, the quiet contempt I had never confessed. It hurt, not because it condemned me, but because it healed me. I felt myself changing, loosening, becoming something I had resisted on earth. Open. Mercy was not excusing my past, it was demanding my future. "If you want to follow me," Jesus said, "you must stop deciding who is worth your love." I surrendered then, fully, not with words, but with release. I let go of the need to be safe first, right first, secure first. I let love take precedence over fear. The moment I did, the fire softened into warmth, and the weight I had carried for so long lifted. I felt aligned in a way I never had before. Jesus placed his hand over my heart, and the touch felt like forgiveness and commissioning at once. "This is mercy," he said. "It costs you everything, but it gives you life." The light around us brightened, no longer exposing, but inviting. For the first time since I died, I felt peace without reservation. Yet I also sensed that something remained unresolved. Mercy had changed me, but love still demanded a response beyond myself. As the light gathered and the space ahead began to open, I knew the final moment was coming, not to judge me again, but to ask what I would do with the truth I had finally received. The gate did not rise from stone or stand guarded by angels. It appeared simply, quietly, as if it had always been there, waiting for eyes that could finally see it. There were no walls attached to it, no fences, no checkpoints, nothing to suggest exclusion by force. It was radiant, alive, and unmistakably final. I understood at once that nothing fearful could pass through it, not because fear was punished, but because fear could not survive there. Love was the only language spoken beyond it. Jesus stood beside me, and the peace near that gate was almost unbearable in its beauty. I felt the pull of it like gravity on my soul. Rest without vigilance, belonging without suspicion, safety without control. Beyond it, I sensed heaven not as escape, but as completion. Love flowed freely there, ordered yet wild, holy yet intimate. I saw earth again, just briefly. Crowded borders, guarded hearts, people longing to be seen as human before anything else. And I understood why this moment mattered so much. "You were afraid of being overrun," Jesus said softly, "but my kingdom is not threatened by love." The truth of it settled into me like breath after drowning. I realized then that heaven had never asked me to solve the world. It had asked me to love it, not selectively, not cautiously, but as he had loved me. I turned to him, and my voice trembled with both longing and resolve. "Let me stay," I whispered. "Let me cross." The gate waited, but did not pull me. Then I understood the choice without it being spoken. Staying meant rest. Returning meant cost. Returning meant loving where fear still ruled, welcoming where rejection felt safer, fearing God more than losing control. I looked again at Jesus, at the scars that had crossed every border I had feared. "Send me back," I said at last, the words tearing out of me. "They need to know you are not afraid of them." His smile held sorrow and joy together. "Then go," he said, "and love without walls." The fall back into my body was violent, air burning into my lungs, pain flooding every nerve, voices shouting as the world rushed back in. I gasped, cried, and clung to consciousness like someone pulled from deep water. When my eyes opened, the room felt small, loud, unfinished, but something within me was settled forever. I had seen the gate. I had learned what fear costs and what love requires. Now I live knowing this. Heaven does not fear migrants. God does not fear the stranger. Only hearts that refuse to trust love do. When I stand before that gate again, I will not bring my borders with me. I will bring only the mercy that remade me and the fear of God that finally taught me how to love.